This is Maximalism Part 2, The Psychology of Maximalism, Horvathi, and Anxiety. So, reviewing, maximalism is the value of excess. Psychologically, maximalism can boost self-esteem by demonstrating visual success. Think again about like the collection of trophies, a display of wealth or power, your social position and power, your ability to collect and conserve resources. And maximalism can also serve as a way to combat anxiety and to create a safe environment. Yesterday we talked briefly about COVID culture and how the change from a minimal interior for a living space to a maximist interior where you were surrounded by comfort and distractions, such as you see pictured here. You have a warm fire, a comfy looking furniture, lots of books and other items to distract yourself with. So, maximalism and anxiety. First of all, understand that anxiety is an emotion. It's normal. It's a healthy response to tension and stress. It's part of your instincts that keep you alive. Physically, it's indicated by your blood pressure can go up, your heart rate, your hormones and endorphins start releasing, and there's changes in your pupil dilation. It prepares your body and your mind for flight, fight, or freeze situational response. There are disorders where anxiety kind of goes a little bit beyond what you need. And a lot of times that can result from being placed in anxious situations too often. So looking at the little graphic over here, that is a pretty good graphic. Regular anxiety, it's a normal reaction to stress or difficult times. It's triggered by a specific stressor, such as you have to take a test, you have swimming class for for gym class, and you have to be in your swimsuit in front of the rest of the class. Those are examples of specific stressors. It has a start and an ending point. You know it has an infinite amount of time. This is when it's going to happen, and this is when it's going to be over. It can be helpful or motivational. Right now, some of you are probably experiencing this type of anxiety as we get towards the end of the semester, and you realize that in order to pass your classes, you might have to catch up on some things that you put off. It can lessen significantly or disappear once you're away from stressful situations. Relaxing often helps you feel better. And it can be a response to toxic situations. If a situation makes you anxious, then you remove yourself from that situation. Okay? Now, anxiety disorders is when anxiety comes out of nowhere. There's not a specific triggering instance to it, like you don't have swimsuit gym class or test or something of that nature. It just comes. It's intense or disproportionate emotional response. It's ongoing. It doesn't have any relief. It can last weeks. It can last months. There isn't a time where you're not keyed up. And thus it can interfere with day-to-day life. Physical symptoms would include things like sweating, trembling, lightheadedness, heart racing. It can affect your food systems. You could either feel nauseated and uncomfortable and not want to eat, or you could go opposite and just want to eat because it's comforting and makes you feel secure. It feels impossible to control or manage, and it's a very, very real thing that a lot of people live with. So when we talk about anxiety in relationship to maximalism, maximalism is a way that some people control or manifest their anxiety. So it can be acquiring items, creating a feeling of preparedness, safety, and control, and a reinforcement of the self. So this could be anything that you do, from making sure that your cell phone is always charged. So you always have multiple cell phone chargers. There's one in your bag, there's one at home, there's one at school, there's one in your car. You always have pencils for class. Or it could be something extreme as doomsday prepping, where you have, like in the image, a secure bunker and enough supplies to last you for years while you hide out underground. This is a way to control things. I'll give you another example of it. My generation, a lot of our parents lived through the Great Depression. And because there was so little in the Great Depression, they tended to save everything, like bits of string, rubber bands, paper bags. And we kind of grew up with that mindset. So my brother-in-law, who is older than I am by about 20 years, he has a thing about holidays and turkeys. And because turkeys, as you may or may not notice, go on super sale by Thanksgiving, so he proceeds to hoard turkeys and will buy many turkeys. We're talking double-digit turkeys here, to put in freezers and save them up. And if he doesn't have any more room, he'll just buy them and give them to people so that everybody is prepared with turkeys. Now, if you have extreme anxiety, or some people, not necessarily you, but people with extreme anxiety can create extreme maximalism. This can manifest in disorders such as hoarding, where items are kept regardless of value, usefulness, or condition. And the items create a physical and psychological wall between the person and the world. It is their security structure. And there's so much fear involved with discarding an item because it might come in handy someday. Whether it's your great-great-grandparents that are collecting rubber bands and refusing to get rid of them, or whether, like the image on the right, it's a hoarder that has a collection of objects that can include valuable things and useful things, but also can include things like trash. A study that was done by Yale University on brain scans discovered that when somebody has a hoarding anxiety disorder, if you are in their own environment and surrounded by their things, their brains start releasing stress-reducing hormones, things that make you feel better and safer and take down those anxiety levels. But once they were removed from their environment, the anxiety went up. And then once the people started messing with their environment, like cleaning up or whatever, their anxiety went way up. The flip side of that is somebody who has total control over their environment. Everything is very structured, controlled, has a place, is kept a very precise kind of way. So in art, and some of you did this in Art 1, if you remember, depending upon how long that was ago for you. We talked about horror vacui. It's the fear of the void. It's literally the fear of empty space or missing things. And it's one of the key characteristics of outsider art. And it's often a visual manifestation of anxiety control. This is an image by Adolf Wolfe, who was an institutionalized patient, and you can see every space is filled up. There's a lot of symmetry, a lot of patterns. So horror vacui can be seen in both two-dimensional and three-dimensional art. We're going to look at examples of horror vacui in both outsider and mainstream art. And outsider art reviewing is art that's created by individuals that are outside the mainstream art world. So they haven't had formal training other than maybe a few classes in school, lower school, not high school. or they make art for highly personal reasons. They don't care if anybody else likes it or sees it. They don't make it to sell or give away. It's just for them. They make it compulsively. They cannot not make art. And the individuals are often living in institutions or isolated settings. Now, institutions are not necessarily hospitals, but institution is any kind of environment where you have to live that you are not in control of your basic needs. Somebody else decides when you're going to eat, sleep, etc. So institutions as well as hospital situations also include things like prisons. They include things like the military, boarding schools, places like that. And isolation doesn't mean that you're living way out in the middle of nowhere, though it can. It can also be a socially isolated person that is around, lives in an apartment complex in the middle of New York City, but they don't associate with anybody. Because of the enforced social isolation with COVID culture, there is a lot of a manifestation of this. So some outsider art examples in various formats. On the left, you have kind of a soft sculpture doll that is made and stitched and sewn and painted on. In the middle, there is a drawing with foil. And on the right, a sculptural figure that is made from bottle caps, buttons, and things like that. So characteristics here, items are made with what they have on hand, whether it's foil and marker, or bottle caps, or thread and materials. There is not any negative space. Even areas like in the middle image that would be the background is covered in a pattern, and the figures are totally covered with things. It can extend into environments. A lot of outsider artists extended to their house and their surrounding environments. On the left, we see one where they used both regular tiles and then also broken items to create this environment, this wall, and their whole outside of the house is like this. This is in the middle. It's the trash cathedral that has a lot of ironwork structure and rebar that is covered with discarded items like toys, surfboards, toy cars, and other things. Those are the little air conditioner things on the top of buildings. And it just creates this unique structure. And then on the right is the Schmidt House in New England, where he covered the whole house with windows. Not all the windows looked out on anything. Okay, there were walls behind a lot of those windows. So the window was there as kind of a decoration and not actually a functional window. This doesn't exist anymore, the Schmidt House, but the other two do exist. There are some local environments like this. There's one in Ocean Isle Beach, and there was the Dillon Fence in Dillon, South Carolina, which I believe is still there, which was very similar to the item in the middle. Other examples, extending on to clothing and embroidery with thread. This was a lady that was institutionalized, and so she started working on clothes as well as paper. In the middle part is another one that is similar to that, and a paper drawing. Again, everything is filled up. There's not any negative space. Even areas like the skin are filled with some sort of design and pattern. So mainstream art examples, and you can see the difference design-wise, that these designs have more of a formal control to them. And these are all contemporary to us now, pretty much. The repeating jungle pattern that began as a design with the zebra, the giraffe, and the leopard, and the snake, and the plants, that was then repeated over and over again. And then on the right, the very non-objective kind of slightly reminds you of plants. They're just shapes, colors that clash. There's patterns within some of those shapes. On the left, we have part of another Maximalism photograph where the background and the umbrella are printed with the same pattern, so they kind of blend together and break your ground, so you're not quite sure what's background and what's not. The model is covered in a very heavily patterned garment on a patterned items that she's sitting on. Middle part is a collage, and this type of collage was extremely popular during around 2000 to 2010 or so, where you have lots of images that are layered up. Some are digitally printed and then cut out, put on top of each other, photographed and printed again to get the resulting layers of softness. And then you have other cutouts put on top. And then on the right, another painting where it is sort of like minimalism, and that is just exploring art elements, line, color, shape, form, but it's very dense. It takes up the whole page. It's very detailed. Its things are different within each section. The very famous painting of President Obama, former President Obama, with very highly detailed portraiture, and then a very maximalist background of the leaves and the flowers and vines, which is painted. That's not a photograph, that's a painting. And then on the right, more of a popular culture, graphic art reference of assorted items, some of which are still around and some of which are not. And it's kind of a mirror maze. You have a classic piece of art, Michelangelo's Pietà, in the middle. But then in the background, you've got all sorts of things. There's the laughing teeth. There's a flip phone, Kentucky Fried Chicken, a bear. I like bears. Grapes and motorcycles and guns and flamingos and a bombardment of objects. So your assignment, you are going to play with some of the abstract kind of non-objective things, just so that you can experiment with filling in the horror vacuum aesthetic. So you're going to need paper, pen or pencil, colored pencils and or watercolors. You could also do this digitally as a digital painting. And it's really easy and kind of relaxing. You cover first your entire paper with loose scribbles, and you can just use a pencil for that. And then you fill the scribbles with assorted colors and patterns, change between each one, don't leave any negative space, and then photograph it and upload. And you have two examples to your right. The top one is watercolor, and the bottom one is colored pencil. What I want you to keep in mind is the spaces are not large, so don't do like 5 big spaces. No, you have to have multiple spaces, cluttery, fill it up. Okay? That's it.